The story of Paris begins long before the grand cathedrals, palaces, and boulevards that would later define its landscape. At the heart of its origins lies the modest but strategic island in the Seine River known today as the Isle d'Ala site. This natural stronghold provided both shelter and defense, making it an ideal place for early settlement. Archaeological evidence indicates that humans inhabited this area as far back as 250 BCE, when a Celtic tribe known as the Parisii established their community along the riverbanks. The Parisii, part of the larger Gaulish people, thrived through fishing, farming, and trade, using the Seine as a vital artery that connected their settlement to other regions of Gaul. Parisii chose the site not only for its fertile land, but also for its accessibility. The Seine offered a natural route for commerce, and the river's islands allowed for control of movement and protection from potential invaders. Over time, their settlement grew into a bustling hub of exchange. Artifacts such as coins minted by the Parisii testify to their prosperity and autonomy, showing that even in these early days, the community held a sense of identity and self-governance. This Celtic foundation, however, did not remain untouched for long. By the 1st century BCE, the expanding power of Rome swept across Gaul. Julius Caesar's campaigns brought the Parisii under Roman control, marking a significant transformation in the destiny of the settlement. The Romans would rename the area Lutetia, rebuild it with their characteristic infrastructure of roads, aqueducts, and forums, and lay down the framework of what would, centuries later, become the city we now call Paris. Thus, from its earliest days, Paris was born at the crossroads of geography, trade, and conquest, a city destined to evolve from a tribal village into the capital of a great civilization. When the Romans arrived in the mid-1st century BCE, the settlement of the Parisii underwent profound changes. The Romans were masters of urban planning, and they quickly reshaped the modest Celtic village into a structured Roman town. They named it Lutetia Parisiorum, commonly shortened to Lutetia. Though the name Lutetia carries uncertain origins, possibly meaning marshland, it soon became synonymous with Roman order, culture, and connectivity. Under Roman rule, Lutetia developed into a flourishing city. The Romans constructed a forum, baths, temples, aqueducts, and an amphitheater, imbuing the settlement with the hallmarks of Roman civilization. The town expanded from the Isle d'Ala site to the left bank of the Seine, where wide streets and stone buildings reflected Roman architectural ambition. Archaeological remains, such as the Arenes de Lutèce, a Roman amphitheater that could seat thousands, still bear witness to this era. The location of Lutetia was advantageous. It sat at the crossroads of two major Roman roads, one stretching toward Lyon and the Mediterranean, the other toward the northern provinces and the English Channel. This made the city a vital link in trade and military logistics. Grain, wine, and other goods flowed through the Seine, ensuring prosperity and integration into the Roman economy. Yet Lutetia was not merely an administrative or economic center. It became a melting pot of cultures. The Parisii, while gradually Romanized, preserved elements of their identity, blending Celtic traditions with Roman customs. Over time, Latin became the dominant language, but local practices endured, creating a hybrid cultural landscape. The Roman transformation of Paris was not without challenges. Invasions by Germanic tribes in the 3rd century CE tested its resilience, and partial destruction required rebuilding. Still, Lutetia endured, setting a foundation of resilience and adaptability that would characterize Paris throughout history. By the late Roman Empire, Lutetia had already established itself as a city of significance, but the decline of Roman authority in the West would alter its destiny once again. As imperial control weakened in the 4th and 5th centuries CE, waves of invasions swept across Gaul. Among the most consequential were those of the Germanic tribes, particularly the Franks, who would shape the city's future. During this period of turbulence, the name Paris began to supplant Lutetia, drawing from the original Parisi tribe. The continuity of the tribal name reflected both a longing for roots and a rebirth in identity. The early Christian church also left a deep imprint on Paris during this time. One of its most revered figures, Saint Denis, is said to have been martyred on the hill, later known as Montmartre. According to tradition, after his execution, he carried his head several miles before finally collapsing, marking the site where the Basilica of Saint Denis would eventually be built. This story of sacrifice and faith elevated Paris as a spiritual center, linking its destiny to the spread of Christianity in Europe. In the 5th century, Clovis I, king of the Franks, captured the city and made it his capital. His decision was strategic. Paris was defensible thanks to the Seine and central within his growing kingdom. Even more importantly, Clovis converted to Christianity around 496 CE, aligning himself with the Roman Catholic Church. This act forged a bond between the Frankish monarchy and the Church that would define French political and cultural life for centuries. Under Clovis and his successors, Paris began its transformation from a provincial Roman town into the heart of a new kingdom. Its identity, once Celtic and Roman, was now Christian and Frankish, marking a new stage in its long journey toward becoming a capital of enduring influence. The Middle Ages marked a turning point in the destiny of Paris. By the 10th century, the city had endured waves of Viking invasions, but its resilience allowed it to emerge stronger. When Hugh Capet, Count of Paris, was elected King of the Franks in 987 CE, the Capetian dynasty established Paris as the nucleus of its growing power. From this moment, Paris was no longer simply a regional center. It was becoming the heart of a kingdom that would evolve into modern France. The medieval centuries saw Paris transform into a thriving hub of culture, commerce, and learning. Its population expanded rapidly, fueled by trade along the Seine and by its status as the royal seat. Markets flourished, guilds organized, and artisans thrived, giving Paris a reputation as one of Europe's busiest and most dynamic cities. One of the most defining developments of this era was the rise of the University of Paris in the 12th century. Centered around the district of the Latin Quarter, the university became a beacon of medieval scholarship, attracting students and teachers from across Europe. It played a central role in shaping theology, philosophy, and law, with figures such as Peter Abelard and Thomas Aquinas leaving their mark. Paris thus gained a reputation, not only as a political capital, but as an intellectual one. The city's spiritual prestige was also reinforced through monumental architecture. The construction of Notre Dame Cathedral, begun in 1163, symbolized both religious devotion and the grandeur of Gothic innovation. Alongside the Basilica of Saint Denis, Notre Dame established Paris as a pilgrimage site and a model of Christian artistry. By the 13th century, Paris had blossomed into the largest city in Western Europe, a center of royal authority, scholarship, and spirituality. Its medieval foundation laid the cultural and institutional framework that would sustain its prominence for centuries to come. As Paris entered the later Middle Ages, it had already become the heart of a kingdom, yet its journey was not without hardship. The 14th century brought immense challenges. The 100 Years' War with England, outbreaks of plague, and internal strife all threatened the city's stability. Despite this turmoil, Paris demonstrated a remarkable resilience, continually rebuilding and reinventing itself. The city's strategic position along the Seine ensured it remained central to trade and politics, while its spiritual and intellectual prestige helped sustain its influence even in times of crisis. By the late Middle Ages, the French monarchy had further cemented Paris as its principal seat of power. Kings expanded the royal palace on the Isle de la Cite, what would become the Palais de la Cite, and commissioned new fortifications to defend the growing metropolis. Simultaneously, the city's cultural life deepened. Literature, theology, and philosophy flourished within the University of Paris, reinforcing the city's reputation as the capital of Christendom. The emergence of Gothic art and architecture, visible in Notre Dame, Saint Denis, and Sainte-Chapelle, testified to Paris's role as a cradle of creativity. The conclusion of the Hundred Years' War in the 15th century allowed Paris to rise once again. Though damaged by conflict, it stood ready to lead France into the Renaissance. The memory of its Celtic roots, its Roman foundations, its Christian transformation, and its Capetian rise had woven together a unique identity. Paris was more than a city. It was a symbol of resilience, learning, and faith. Thus, the origin of Paris is not a single moment, but a tapestry of eras. From a Celtic village to a Roman town, from a Frankish capital to a medieval powerhouse. This legacy of endurance and renewal would guide Paris as it evolved into one of the greatest capitals of the world.